everyone, the December Review here, back again with a movie review. Today, we have the new Charlie Kaufman film, I'm Thinking About Ending Things. It's currently out on Netflix, and I think a few drive-in places are showing it as well. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews. As with all Kaufman films, linear storytelling is but a figment of his imagination. I'm Thinking About Ending Things is a somewhat confusing high-wire act built around themes of growing older and what it all means. There will be spoilers ahead as I dive into some specifics of the film. But is it worth a recommendation? Let's find out. Well, there's no real great way to describe the plot of this film. There's what we see, then there's what's a metaphor, then there's what is real, what is fake, and then there's what actually happened. On the surface, it's a film about a couple on a trip to meet the boyfriend's parents during a blizzard. Jessie Buckley plays the girlfriend, credited as the young woman, but seemingly has multiple names during the film. Jesse Plemons plays Jake, the boyfriend. The fact that both lead actors have the same first name makes the most sense of the entire production. Well, I say that jokingly. So our couple drives to meet the parents, they have an evening with said parents, and then they drive home. That's the arc of the picture. Weaved inside of this 134-minute opus are moments of dread, tension, show tunes, and time shifts. So let me say that I have never read the book on which this is based on. I imagine there are a lot of things there that would probably help the narrative, which is extremely sketchy after one viewing of the film. Once it ended, I was ready to write it off as a slightly pretentious Shining ripoff that didn't follow through with its setup and felt that it purposely wanted to either ignore an audience's desire to be entertained with a point or try so hard to come out of left field that the end result was a bit of a mess. But it's been a few hours since I watched it, and a funny thing happened as I started putting together this review. I found myself revisiting a bunch of the moments in the film, trying to uncover what I was missing. Kaufman doesn't make pointless movies after all. Sure, they aren't for everyone, but his abstract sense of reality is always apparent. My mind started to work backwards, lingering on the schoolhouse setting at the end of the film, rolling along back to the ice cream shop, then back to the basement. I started to put together some things that may or may not be the actual accounts of the proceedings, but damned if it wasn't much more interesting to me now. The film can be divided up in a few different sections. Let's start with the actual things that we see on the screen. The acting is very well done here. Buckley gives a lot of different looks, from shy glances to strong and confident opinions, and is basically what we think is our main character to follow. She is, but not really. I'll get to that. From the opening, though, the first long drive to the parents' house, she goes on quite the internal dialogue of page reading, built to give us the insight that after only 6 weeks of this relationship, she is thinking about ending things with Jake. We know this because it's mentioned about 37 times. And much like a stage play, it's all there to build the character up, so by the time we are in the car with Jake, we already have a sense of her essence, but he starts off as a bit of a mystery. Jesse plays Jake close to the vest. He is obviously into his relationship, but as we begin our very extended evening with his parents, his cracks and nervousness begins to show. At times, he lashes out in quick bits of rage. It's all in contrast with his build-up as someone who just wants to do good and expects everyone to take care of each other. This is shown on screen at one point as he is trying to feed his mom food, which happens to be after dinner. A dinner in which went on forever, but no one seemed to eat anything. The parents are played by Toni Collette and David Thewlis. They get to really go deep here at times. They have an interesting introduction as when the couple arrives, Mother, as she is affectionately known in the film, is in a window waiting for them to come in. Jake decides to take the young woman on a tour of the barn area that they live at. It's an extended moment where we see some livestock which are deceased. She is taken aback by the situation while Jake is much more used to the cycle of life. We finally end up in the home, and now it's our turn to wait as the parents take a while to make their way downstairs. This allows Jake to show her around some parts of the house, setting up a tension-filled beauty of a scene with the basement door, but more on that later. The mother and father are eventually introduced to us, and they are played brilliantly with older-aged mannerisms and touches of insanity. Toni Collette goes from interested to horrified to confused to laughing, all within a matter of moments here. She bounces around the emotional spectrum, leaving me to not truly know who she is. David gets a bit more of a centered position. His health is clearly in some trouble, but he appears to have his wits about him, which is much more in line that helps the evening progress along without turning into utter chaos. Or so we think. Up until this point, there has been traces of the surreal, but things start to get extra strange after dinner. As if switching things up on a dime while telling a story, she turns around to see everyone has disappeared. She begins to walk through the house looking for them. This sets up multiple scenes where now the parents are much older. Mother is haggard, almost close to the end, being fed by Jake. Father is battling dementia, shaking uncontrollably while saying that when he does eventually lose his thoughts, it will be better because at least he won't know what he forgot, or something like that. They are somewhat sweet moments within the change paradox of the film. And they switch back just as quickly, for by the time the couple does leave to go home, they are back to younger versions of themselves. But which version is the reality? Is any of this real? And that's the thought I keep coming back to. What really just happened? Let me try and wrap up the drive home real quick. Jake decides he needs something sweet to eat. We are in the middle of a blizzard in which the word treacherous is mentioned a lot, setting up the feeling that something bad is going to happen on the way home. We stop at an ice cream place, inexplicably open during the winter storm, where Jake has been to countless times. He turns his back on the food servers, leaving the young woman to place the order. She is warned by a third server to stay there and not continue the drive. She first apologizes for the smell of varnish at the establishment, but concludes with that it isn't varnish and she's not safe. It's something that I don't remember being mentioned again later on in the film, but I'll have to double check to see what that whole varnish thing was setting up. We settle back into the car where Jake decides he doesn't want the ice cream and that their cups will ruin the car and that they must stop to throw them away. This sets up the ending where they stop by his old high school and seemingly they never leave. So originally, like I said, I thought it was just a confusing mess where there is a point buried somewhere, but I'll never find it. I was upset that the film didn't come through on its build-up. It aligned all of its stars to the school, and we get the classic setup of a girl walking through the hall searching for her boyfriend, setting up a murder or something like that. Instead, we meet the janitor who says he hasn't seen Jake, and we literally break into dance scenes, a talking cartoon pig ghost, and a musical number. Talk about subverting expectations. Or maybe the film didn't subvert anything at all. It was all there in the setup, at least from what I can tell after one viewing. Sure, we followed around this couple thinking it was about them, but maybe it was about the janitor all along. Maybe that was the janitor's parents the whole time and that Jake was a stand-in. Or that he was just simply Jake. His girlfriend never existed. Instead, we were shown pieces of his mind, daydreaming, or in this case, night dreaming away as he prepared to end his own life. The line itself, "I'm thinking of ending things," does connect the thought of self-harm, but the film tries really hard to keep using it to show the intentions of breaking up the relationship. Well, that wasn't real either. To illustrate this point, we go back to the basement. It was nicely set up to be the potential room of despair with the scratch marks on the door and Jake's warning to never go down there. They even mention that old horror movie motif, never go down into the basement. But once we do eventually get there, we aren't hit over the head with some blunt instrument as we'd expect, but there were definitely some clues to the situation. Mainly the washing machine. The young woman is tasked with placing some clothes in an already filled wash, which includes multiple pairs of the same clothing that contain a logo on them. We have no idea what they are at the time, but it turns out to be the outfit that the janitor is wearing. There is also a connection between the paintings she finds of Jake's down there and the ones that she shows his parents during the dinner. Now let's go back to the school, where we get a shot of the trash bin filled with the same ice cream cups that were just dropped off. Internally, I was thinking that Jake is a serial killer and that the high school is his killing ground. The parents, janitor, and food servers are all in on it. Hell, the entire town could have been involved for all I know at this point. And it's our young woman's unlucky day. This is what was being set up throughout the haze of the film's bizarreness. So as I'm putting this together, something else stood out. The janitor's car. I had thought it was odd that it wasn't covered in as much snow as it should have been once he got into what appeared to be the end of his shift. He doesn't start it up and just brushes off some light accumulation on the windows. It appeared to be in the same condition as our couple's car when they pulled up to the school. This had me thinking that it was him who went and got the ice cream earlier, as he probably did many, many times, hence the multiple cups that were already thrown out. The warning from the server wasn't a warning to our couple's girlfriend, but to him himself. A metaphoric warning, as he did in fact go back to the school and commit suicide instead of staying there like she had asked. There are probably a million more little clues to the reality of the situation, and I could be way off in my assessment. My original score of the film was going to be low and not worth checking out. Well, that number keeps ticking upwards, though, as it dawned on me that the film achieves something many Kaufman films do, and that's force you to think about it much longer after the fact. That alone is great storytelling, even if you don't particularly care for the story being told. I was reminded of one of my favorite Kaufman films, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. There, the time jumps and lack of reasoning echoed through the story's plotline of trying to erase the memory of someone from your mind. All of the craziness made sense in regards to that film's push and pull on love, hurt, and the attempt to remove personal pain brought on by a relationship. Here, some of those same tricks are used, but without the same context, which can wind up confusing the audience as it did me. This is told in a much more subtle horror narrative that never goes full horror, which I also think hurts its chances with the viewers. But I'm glad to say that the film's own purpose does shine through, though, eventually. It's a theme of growing older, wondering what it's all about, where things begin to where you are now. It's a picture of a mental struggle playing out within the confines of a janitor's memory during a work shift. The horror elements are there because sometimes life can be scary. But in the end, instead of showing us gore, it gives us a death scene from the perspective of the stage and a musical number from beyond this life as our janitor enters into the great beyond. Or something like that. I don't know. This one was a tough movie to nail down. I must say that the directing and cinematography for this film is some of the best that I've seen this year. Overall, I'm Thinking About Ending Things 3.5 stars out of 5. It's definitely not for everyone. There are long stretches of talking and monologues with seemingly not much to its core other than a few instances of dread and odd camera angles to keep you in the mix. But it's actually something much bigger than that. It's trying to tell a much bigger story on life in a way only Charlie Kaufman can. In some regards, it holds its cards much closer to David Lynch during its setup, but its ending is rich in Kaufman magnitude that any of his fans will most likely enjoy discussing it for years to come. If this all sounds like something that would interest you, it will. Check it out on Netflix for yourself.